Okay, let's begin with our respiration review. Let's start with the respiration equation, and we'll go over the reactants and the products. Remember, the reactants are the things that we start with, and the products happen to be what is made. So during cellular respiration, we start with, we have oxygen. That's one of our reactants. And glucose is another reactant. Now, glucose, when you see that, I know you're thinking just sugar, but this happens to be our food source. What's made during cellular respiration? So what are our products? Carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Energy is very important to us. Remember, all living things need energy. If you look at this equation, you should notice it's pretty much the inverse of the photosynthesis equation. All right, let's keep going. Where does respiration occur? I mean, which organelle? In the mitochondria of all eukaryotes. Remember, eukaryotes would be plants and animals, along with fungi and some protists. It does also occur in some prokaryotes. Not all prokaryotes, but there are some bacteria out there that do actually perform cellular respiration. And here's a nice little picture of the mitochondria. Now, anaerobic respiration, that's when there's little to no oxygen. And we discussed two types, alcoholic fermentation and lactic acid fermentation. Let's start with alcoholic fermentation. The products from glycolysis, they produce alcohol and carbon dioxide along with NAD+. Now, those products, those are things that cause bread dough to rise, and they give bread its distinct flavor. There's some bread that might be a little more sour, a little stronger in taste. Well, that all comes from the alcohol that is produced during alcoholic fermentation. What makes the bread dough rise would be the carbon dioxide gas. So if you look at a piece of bread, you notice it's not totally smooth. It has little holes in it, and that's from the gas. And at the end of this process, 2 ATP molecules are produced. So not a lot of energy, but there is some energy that is produced there. Now, lactic acid fermentation. Lactic acid fermentation uses the products from glycolysis to make lactic acid and NAD+. You may have done an activity in your class and you felt your muscles burn, or when you go to practice, that may have occurred running for a long period of time or lifting weights. Well, what happens during this, lactic acid is produced in your muscles during exercise when the body is low on oxygen. So that's that burning feeling that you feel when you're working out. And again, during lactic acid fermentation, 2 ATP molecules are produced. So not a lot of energy, but a little bit of energy. Now we have aerobic respiration. That's when oxygen is present. So this is something that we as humans do on a regular basis. There are 3 steps. We start with glycolysis, and remember, that's the breaking down of glucose. You take this word apart, lysis, which means to split, glucose. So we have the splitting of glucose. So remember, lysis means split. Think of your list quizzes. And glyco would be glucose. So what happens during glycolysis, it takes that molecule of glucose and literally breaks it in half. All of this happens in the cytoplasm. That's when pyruvic acid is made, and we have 2 ATP molecules made during glycolysis. So not a whole lot, but a little bit of energy. Then we move on to the Krebs cycle. This actually occurs in the mitochondria, and what happens during the Krebs cycle, this pyruvic acid that was made during glycolysis, well, it's used during the Krebs cycle. It's broken down into carbon dioxide, and 2 ATP molecules are produced. So here we have 2 ATP molecules, not a lot of energy, but some energy. And if you think back to our original equation, well, carbon dioxide happens to be a product. It's what's made. And for us as humans, it's what we would call a byproduct. We don't really need carbon dioxide. We get rid of it by exhaling it. And the final step would be the electron transport chain. That also occurs in the mitochondria. And what it does, it uses the high energy electrons that were made during the Krebs cycle, and it converts the ADP into ATP. Remember, ATP, all right, stores lots of energy. And if you notice at the end of the electron transport chain, 32 to 34 ATP molecules are produced. So that's a lot. So let's look at our total number of ATP molecules at the end of aerobic respiration. So total number of ATP molecules, we have 2. We got that 2 from here, plus another 2, plus we have 32 to 34. So we'll start with 32, and that equals 36 ATP. Or we would have the 2 plus 2 plus, we'll use this 34 this time, and that's 38 ATP. So at the end of aerobic respiration, we can make 36 to 38 ATP molecules. And that's a lot of energy that is created during one cycle of aerobic respiration.